True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Goffendaffer. Hey, thanks for being here. I know it's a Saturday. I'm actually going to try to do many more segments and shows. I feel like the news just comes up. I could do one every day, honestly, because so much is going on right now, particularly with the Idaho 4 case, which has been really the primary focus of this platform, as well as the Twitter X platform. It's just such an important case. So there was a huge document. I hate to say dump, a huge document reveal, if you will, that occurred a couple of days ago. And I just wanted to touch base on some of the very particular items in those documents. I know I already touched base on almost everything on X, but I wanted to come out here and just say a few items. First of all, I wanted to talk about Brian Koberger and the KBAR knife. The KBAR knife is something, quite frankly, that many who follow the case and many who have really been involved in the weeds with this case for 2+ years now, we've known that he purchased the KBAR knife for a long time. But anytime there's source information, and that's what that was, a source very, very intimate and close with that investigation, came forward and revealed that indeed the Amazon information would show that the KBAR knife was purchased by Brian Koberger. Now, to anytime you have a source, you have to look at, well, is there anything to corroborate that? And of course, we saw very specific search warrant information revealed where indeed they had issued search warrants to KBAR, the company, and then also to Amazon. They went to KBAR first because they wanted to know where their different outlets were that were in and around Pullman, Washington, and Moscow, Idaho, to see if those were possible avenues that an individual could purchase. And then also, of course, Amazon and other outlets that sell the knife online. And then from there, I know I did a huge deep dive back in the day about all of this. I was trying to figure out exactly which knife was purchased. And it's very interesting because they had dialed down to knowing it was one of really 3 knives. And that was long ago, meaning at the very beginning, before Brian Koberger's name was ever even in the conversation. So the importance of finding the KBAR knife or the KBAR purchaser of that knife really can't go underestimated. It just can't. And this is why. They haven't found the murder weapon. They don't have it. And because of that, linking somebody that they believe is responsible, in this case, Brian Koberger, he's been charged, he's been indicted with 4 counts of murder and burglary. Burglary, just so everyone knows, a lot of people think if you burgle a house, it means you went in and you took something. That's a robbery. Burglary statutorily means to break in a house, essentially. So that's why he's been charged with those 5 counts. And so they had a lot to work with, meaning law enforcement, regarding the murder weapon very early on, right? Because the murderer did a big mistake, and that knife sheath was left behind underneath Maddie Mogen, partially underneath Maddie Mogen on that bed. And, my belief has always been and always will be that he did not, meaning the murderer did not secure that knife sheath appropriately. Particularly if he had on coveralls, which I think is a possibility, that knife sheath would have been not secured properly, meaning in a pocket or depending on the style of clothing he had, perhaps on the outside in a pant, and it just wasn't secured. Those sheaths have to be on a belt. They're made to go on a belt and to be tied and secured, because it's very difficult. They're very stiff to even get the KBAR removed from a sheath. And again, if it's snapped in, it's very difficult to unsnap. Again, I don't believe Brian Koberger. I don't believe the murderer. Again, Brian Koberger is charged with this crime. I don't believe that he unsnapped the sheath at that moment of committing these crimes. I don't believe that at all. First of all, he was gloved. I believe the reason his DNA, which is known as touch DNA, but to understand fully what touch DNA really is, your skin cells sloughing off onto something. So friction being hard enough to remove skin cells and sloughing off on that button snap. And I think the reason that that occurred was because he sat there and he practiced. He practiced opening. He thought about it. We know now from the documents that he's had that knife for 8 months. Now, some have made a point of saying, how are you going to prove that he particularly purchased it? In other words, what if there was a family plan or he purchased it through another account other than his own Amazon account? For those of you who have Amazon, we have a family account. So everybody can use this account, and how you can tell which user really is using it is the address where the product goes to, as well as the credit card information. And then law enforcement has the luxury of looking at click information, right? So if I'm here on my Apple and I am clicking, they're going to be able to show that in their digital review, and they can see the exact time that on my computer I went into Amazon, and Amazon can show the exact time that I ordered something. It's really as simple as that. So I've seen some accounts out there saying, oh, it was a different account. It's going to be inconsequential. They're going to be able to show it through financial information. In other words, how he paid for it. They're going to be able to show it through the click information as I just described. And then also the delivery information. And also, I think anybody else who would have had access to that account, they could be called to the stand to testify whether they did or did not order that knife. So I think when you put that all together, this seems very obvious as to why the prosecution believes they have a very strong case that indeed Brian Koberger purchased this KBAR knife, the KBAR knife that was used in the murder of Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie. Further, about this knife situation, there were, something pretty interesting, and that was that he, after the murder, was browsing, not ordered, but browsing and looking to purchase another KBAR knife, another and another sheath. And I've heard a lot of different people sort of speculating about that. For me, I think it's very simple to understand that he, in my opinion, would have wanted to murder again. And I think secondarily, he knew that he was never going to use that particular knife or that sheath again. The sheath was gone. And as far as the knife, I think he disposed of it in a place, even though I know a lot of people said, yeah, he would want to keep a trophy. He would want all of this. He disposed of all of that. I think as a PhD criminal student, he knew certain pitfalls, and that is being found with any evidence that relates you to the crime. And he did a good job at that. A lot of people point out, oh my gosh, Brian Koberger wasn't very smart. Look at what he did. He used his own car. Well, he had to use his own car because the alternatives are even worse. If you rent a car, then there's a trail, huge trail of that. If you steal a car, now you're really putting yourself in peril because you're driving around in a stolen vehicle that law enforcement is looking for. If you borrow a car from a friend, now you have more people that you've brought into the conspiracy, and that are going to be able to rat you out for loaning them your car during these murders. So the smart thing to do, in my belief, was um, use his own car. And again, he had only one tag, which I think was important. He went in the cover of darkness, which was very important. He drove very quickly, which was very important. And he had a car that was actually a white sedan like that is quite common. And I think he knew it would be obvious that the different videos that would have seen him would have been grainy and difficult to capture, as is what happened. You know, it was difficult. And to precisely point out exactly what vehicle was being driven. So he did a lot of things right, in my opinion. One of the biggest things that came out to me in these documents was confirmation that law enforcement believes he changed. And it's something we've always said. I think most of us believed that happened when law enforcement was unable to find DNA evidence in his car. And for those of us that are familiar with DNA transfer and have worked cases where individual commits a crime and then they go to another scene or location, it's Lockhart's theory, and basically it's the theory of transfer. Whenever you go to a scene, you leave part of you. When I go anywhere, my hair falls out. I leave my hair everywhere, right? But not only hair, I could leave fibers from your carpet. You could leave fibers from a fuzzy sweater you have on. No matter what, you leave things behind and you take things with you, not just in a crime scene, but in anything you do. And he knew about this. I mean, anybody in, basic Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice is going to know about Lockhart's theory. And for this reason, he was very conscientious, and I believe he bagged the bloody, and they would have been a bloody mess from certainly Xana and, or I'm sorry, Maddie and Kaylee, and likely a bloody mess from, to some degree, the others, because of blood spatter and because of injecting that sharp KBAR knife in and pulling it out and putting it back in would cause great spatter. And if the necks of Maddie and Kaylee were cut, obviously you can imagine hitting that artery, the carotid artery, the kind of blood that would project from one's neck. So very important there. As far as him ordering this other knife, it's just, for me, I think, shows what most of us knew, right? That he was possibly a fledgling serial killer, that this wasn't going to be his first rodeo. And I think that, to me, what we saw with these documents points that out. And then also for me, it tells me that he thinks wherever he disposed of that KBAR knife, it was good spot, and he wasn't going to go back to it, and it's gone, at least in his view, because he needed to order another knife. Let me make sure I don't miss anything on the knife. Okay, I think I have everything on there. Oh no, one other item. He also ordered a sharpener. I should have put a picture up of a KBAR sharpener. Thought this was very interesting, but understand that KBAR knives, they do get dull, and they get dull kind of quickly, but mostly because KBAR knives are true killing machines. I mean, they are meant to cause great damage. They're super and they are military knives. They're knives used by law enforcement. They're knives used by hunters and by fishermen. They are exceedingly sharp and exceedingly dangerous and do a lot of damage. But they need sharpened because typically the type of usage for them inflicts a lot of dullness because of the use that they're used for. So anyway, also very interesting. I think that he bought a sharpener. It makes me wonder if in his kit bag, and I believe he had a kit bag, in the cases I've had involving people that were predators, they had a kit bag, typically with rope, typically with either handcuffs and or zip ties, knives, a gun, mask, gloves. Their kit bag was equipped. I believe Brian Koberger had a very equipped, very well equipped kit bag, including something plastic to put his clothing into. And there's a reference about that in the documents. That was also very interesting. Let's see. I want to put up, because I'm getting fancy now, this photo that everybody's been talking about. There's a lot of things I just wanted to touch on with this photo, and I know everybody's been talking about it, and I'm going to repeat a little bit about what I wrote about it. And this was, gosh, it seems like days ago now, right when it first came out. First of all, a couple things. First of all, he's putting his thumbs up. And if you look closely, I see at least some what appears to be bruising or at least darker marks on his hand, particularly down the thumb area, almost toward where the bone is at the wrist. And that's really interesting to me. I'll be interested whether they make anything out of that or not. I think it's possible. We know this picture was taken at 10:31 a.m. So really just about an hour after he had returned, because remember, even though he had murdered them between 4 and 4:30, he went back at about 9:30 in the morning, I believe, and I've always said this, one, to see if he had dropped the sheath somewhere where he could find it. But mostly, more than that, I think he went back because he could not believe that his grandiose, huge, cathartic statement, this huge murder that he had done, wasn't on television. It wasn't in the news. And I think he was thoroughly angered and just couldn't believe that what he had done wasn't being noticed, and that he wasn't this huge crime. He wasn't being honored in the media the way he thought. That's what I think, and I think that's why he went back. Like, what is going on? Where's the ambulances? Where the police? What in the world happened? This is also why I think, and a lot of people don't agree with me, a lot of people say that the reason Brian Koberger didn't attack Dylan Mortensen, one of the surviving roommates that was on that second floor, when she opened up the door as he was coming by, and she looked at him and identified him with these bushy eyebrows. And actually there was a footprint right by her door that was exposed through because it had blood in that footprint and was exposed through a very specific special process that was used. And that's how we know it was a van shoe right by the door. A lot of people think that he didn't see her and that he would never leave her. I've never agreed with that, although I think it's a possibility. We don't know. Only Brian Koberger knows, and maybe Ann Taylor and his attorneys, if he's shared that. But I think he saw her. I think at that point he had likely already changed out of his bloody clothes. I think at that point perhaps he had been exhausted. He had just committed what he had dreamed about and fantasized about probably for years. And certainly for 8 months, I think, when he ordered that knife. And but I think much further back. this was a tormented, and we know that from his posts. We know that he suffered with issues mentally. We know he says he had no empathy for his family. This is what he says, not what I'm saying. It's what he says. And he had visual snow. He was tormented by that, which interestingly enough, Luigi Mangione also talks about having visual snow. But not to digress, my point is that no empathy, excluded. He was huge. He was very, very overweight. He ended up losing 100 pounds. He ended up having a heroin addiction. This is a kid and a person who is very troubled. And to me, Matty Mogan symbolized what he could never get and what he always wanted. And I think that that was his motivation. And when he went up there, and again, Kaylee's car wasn't there, not meaning Kaylee's new car. I know Kaylee's new car was there, but the car that had always been associated with Kaylee was not there. And so I don't know that he knew that Kaylee would be there. And even if he did he know they would be in the same bed together? I don't believe, I think that was a surprise to him. And when you visualize how something is going to happen, for those of you who play sports, for those of you who maybe act, for those who cook, it doesn't matter. If you visualize something that you're going to be doing coming out a certain way and having a certain result and having a certain feeling, and then it doesn't happen that way, it's a letdown, and it's more of a panic type situation. So now he's got to kill both of them. Xana's up. She's, ordering food and on social media. And, I think she opens that door. I think he comes down. I think he murders her and murders Ethan. I think that, her wounds, again, if they entered with the KBAR knife and came out smoothly, that will cause the skin to sort of close up. One of my first stabbings that I went to, and this was as when I was getting my tactical medic, this woman was stabbed probably, I'd probably touched on this before, I don't know, 7 times, maybe more, all throughout her torso. And she was walking. I mean, she was angry. And the knife was right there. It was a large, large knife. And I think just the adrenaline. And she had a perforated lung. And obviously it was only a matter of time until, but she wasn't this huge bloody mess like you might imagine. It's just not like that. Now you slit somebody's throat, that's a whole different ball game. You stab somebody over and over again in the heart, a major vessel, whole different thing. But depending on how you stab and the reaction to that, right? If the fight stops, and now you've got Ethan to contend with, I think that certainly there was blood, but that she died of the internal damage. And again, this is just my belief. I have not read the autopsy reports. It's my belief that it was the internal damage done by that KBAR knife that killed her. And so there wasn't this huge, gigantic, bloody mess that she was laying in this huge pool of blood. I'm very confident in saying that because we know that they thought she was passed out drunk and that she wasn't coming to. And this goes on for a big period of time now that we have the 911 tapes. And it's really only until a friend gets closer and likely turns her over, that he sees this is far more than just a drunk student. So just wanted to touch base on that. As far as this picture also, shower curtain. There is a sliver off to the right as you're looking at this picture. And could that be a shower curtain? Could that be the wall, the drywall? It's possible it could be the shower curtain. I know I referred to this saying no shower curtain, thinking about, of course, the documents. We know that there was no shower curtain 5 or so, 6 weeks later when law enforcement searched. We know that to be a fact. So when was that taken down? Was it taken down shortly after he took what I'm calling his trophy picture? This is like a victory selfie. I believe he might have been listening to music, maybe a song that he will always identify with these murders again if he committed these crimes, that he'll be listening to. Don't know what it is, but that's what I think he's maybe doing there. I think it's interesting. His shirt is buttoned up all the way. We know now because of new documents again that there's been 3 new diagnoses, right? OCD, and I think that's pretty evident. I'm not sure we even needed a doctor to tell us that. But you could tell by how he conducted things, how his apartment was, how his vehicle was, how his office was. Just he was meticulous, it would seem. His dress, um, it would seem obvious, and I see that here with the tight buttoning up. But then I also wonder, could there have been any marks there? Is that why he's buttoned up so tight? So is it OCD or is it other marks like we see on the left hand? Is he right-handed? Does this tell us now? Because we've always wondered. I thought I saw the sister say he was right-handed at some point, but I haven't been able to find that document. But this kind of shows us he's right-handed. You can take a selfie with your left hand. I don't think I've ever done it. You can do it. Typically, like sometimes when you have a lot of people and maybe you need to readjust, but just all by yourself and you're doing that, I think this would, at least I'm inclined to think now, we know his handedness, that he's right-handed. I think it's very interesting that he's showered seemingly for a second time. I would believe he showered initially after the murders, but now he's gone back. So I find that very interesting. Maybe it's just gel. Maybe he isn't freshly showered, but it just kind of appears. Why is he taking it in front of the shower? I've made a lot out of this on Twitter. Some people say, yeah, right on. And other people say, oh, I think you're making too much of it. I don't think I'm making too much of it. I think when he got home, even though he changed clothes, blood could have penetrated and gotten, mashed up in his hair. Even though his head was fully covered, you can imagine all that blood and penetrating the material that would have been over his head, that would have been on his body and sinking in underneath the clothing. Obviously to the first set of clothes first and then on to him. And I think when he took that shower, I think blood came off of him. And, I think that would have been something that would have been very exciting for him to watch that blood go down the drain, just the total control of these victims that he had the first time. He's really probably had total control over anything. And in this way, he wanted, total control over people that he was jealous of and envious of. So I think the shower, and I mentioned this, the shower curtain being gone. I think that shower curtain was used and possibly had spatter on it. And that's why he got rid of the shower curtain. People said, well, maybe he likes baths. I'm not buying it. I think he took showers, and I think that shower curtain could have been used to wrap the items in. But I'm less leaning toward that since it's possible we could see it there. I'm not sure. I can't say that's a shower curtain. I can't say it's not a shower curtain, but I can tell you that shower curtain wasn't there when law enforcement went there. And I think that's significant. His face is so very, very white. Now, remember, this is the winter time. It's not like he's out on a beach. And he's Coburger. I mean, he's German. His heritage is light. But boy, does he look so ashen, like all the blood has gone out of his face. And for me, I just see it as a sign of somebody who hasn't slept and sort of fatigued. Um, but the biggest thing is obviously to take a selfie like this after such an event, such a horrific murder, and given the thumbs up. People have said, well, he's sending that to somebody. I don't think that at all. I think that Brian Koberger was sending this to himself. I wouldn't doubt that he would have had this on as a screenshot or a screensaver on his phone or on a computer. I think this photo meant a lot to him. It's, look at what I did. Obviously, people take selfies to commemorate things, to show where they're at, to historically give an account for something important that's happened. I think this photo was all of that for Brian Koberger. And it's really pretty sickening. I'm going to take it down. I think that pretty much wraps up. I know everybody said, oh, see, this is so great because the bushy eyebrows. Well, there's a lot of pictures that show his bushy eyebrows, although I will agree, the prosecution here having one just hours later, you can't say, well, he used to have them, but he didn't have them at that time. Well, he had them on within hours of the murders. He had bushy eyebrows. So it's good that they have one that's so commensurate with the time of the murders, but it's so much more than that. This photo is so much more than that. I also finally want to talk about the new information concerning messaging and social media queries from Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, the other surviving roommate. She was downstairs. We've gone over already the 911 call. We've gone over Maddie Mogan's DNA, the 3 DNA. Of course, one is going to be her, and the other, I don't know what the probabilities they're going to be able to show. Could be Kaylee, and then Brian Koberger is listed in there, is having a probability of that DNA being partially his. I think that is so critical. The defense is trying to keep it out. I have not seen the judge answer that motion yet because they don't even want a probability being mentioned, right? Because they can't say it's 100% partially his. And so the defense is saying, well, you shouldn't be able to say it's any percentage. Well, I say, let the jury sort it out. Tell them what percentage that DNA is of Brian Koberger. The fact that it would be any, I think, is significant, but let the jury figure that out. That's a fact for the jury to see, in my opinion. Okay, you see what happened? I got distracted. So I want to pull those texts up, and then that's the last thing we're going to go over really quick. I have them right here. So these are texts that occurred in the morning. Specifically, they were using their phones around 8 in the morning. Now, a lot of people believed that they were not up until the 911 call. And that makes a lot of sense, right? They crashed, they went through all of this, and then they woke up and made the 911 call. But that isn't what happened. There's a long period of time, and everybody has struggled with that. Why in the world did they take forever? Well, we're getting to fill in all the gaps here. So for me, I like this because I'm understanding. We know they were terrified that night. How many times especially if you live alone, how many times did you hear something in the middle of the night? Maybe you heard a noise, maybe you saw a shadow, maybe you saw something right outside your door, and you never, or window, and you never called 911. I can think of so many times that I went and investigated, or I waited till morning, right? I locked the door. I'm like, I'm just going to sit here and wait till morning. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I'm not calling. I think that happens often, and I think it happens to a lot of people. I think at that moment, she remembered, obviously, this this figure. She froze in terror at the moment. Remember, she's drunk. Although to me, the detail given is pretty good for somebody who has been drinking. I shouldn't say she was drunk. I should say she was drinking. And we see the phone calls or the text between Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen. This is not a mystery. We know they were terrified that night. We know. But then now it's hours later, they're awake, and what are they doing? Are they still terrified? No, they aren't terrified. But they call their parents. And I can't wait to hear the testimony from Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen as to why they called their parents. Did they call them and tell them about this? I bet they did. We're going to hear about it. So that's just my belief. It doesn't mean I'm correct. I think we're going to hear from the parents, and I think they're going to say, yeah, they called us and they told us about this person and what should we do? We're huddled together. We're in this bed. And, I'm looking forward to hearing, because I don't think most kids go out partying. And I have 2 children this exact same age, and they call me the next day. No, they're never going to call me unless something significant happened. If they went out the night before to a concert or out where they drank, they're just not going to call me at 8 in the morning. So I'm strictly speaking from, my years of experience with that. But I'm combining it with law enforcement experience from the standpoint of this would be unusual behavior to call in the morning after a night out. So I'm saying it from both standpoints. That's my opinion on it. 7:30, she calls her dad, meaning Bethany Funk. 8 o'clock, the dad, or 8 o'clock, she calls her dad. Then Bethany also calls another number. Then Bethany calls home. So Bethany, for a half an hour, is basically reaching out to her family. That's what she's doing. At 8:02, she calls her mom. And then at 8:09, her dad calls back. So, we're going to have to wait and listen to what the parents say and what Bethany Funk says. But I think it's certainly going to be relevant and relative to what they experienced the night before. I don't believe they've left their rooms by this time. I think they're literally sitting in that bed and reaching out for the people that they trust and that they know will look out for them and that have guided them their whole lives, and that's their parents. So then we see at 8:05, clear to 10 a.m., that Dylan Mortensen is on Instagram. Now, I have no idea what she's doing on Instagram. I have to say, one of the first things I do when I wake up is I get on Twitter X, and I post, because I'm a morning poster mostly. I like to start the morning off with, true crime information to disseminate it. That's what I do. Is she just in that routine of getting on Instagram? But I will say, I would not be on Twitter if I just saw a masked man 4 hours earlier. And I was so terrified that I ran into a room and locked myself in that room to join, whatever, if my son was staying or something. In the same room with my husband, so that wouldn't make sense. But nevertheless, my point is I agree that Dylan Mortensen being on Instagram after this scene is very, it gives us a lot of questions, but she's going to answer those. We're going to see exactly what she did on Instagram. It's not like this is going to be some big mystery. The jury's going to be able to see it, and she's going to be able to explain her actions. I'm guessing she was reaching out to everybody and their dog, meaning friends and everything, reaching out on Instagram. That's what I'm thinking, but we'll see what ends up happening. She also takes some photos, Bethany Funk does, at about 8:41 to 8:42. Um, we don't know what those are of. Are they of each other? Is it selfies? We don't know, but we're going to know. Then at 9 o'clock, the mom texts back. And then now, Bethany Funk, I'm sorry, Dylan Mortensen have incoming and outgoing Snapchat. So now they're Snapchatting. Are they Snapchatting friends? Are they talking about this situation? Are they just thinking everything's normal? They haven't heard anything. There's, Kaylee didn't come down and say, "Oh my gosh, we've been robbed," or Maddie or Xana and Ethan. Nobody came out and said anything. So I think they're literally these girls, again, they had just gotten back home not that long before. They had been drinking and they're up. They've got to be somewhat tired. They're reaching out to their loved ones. They're, I think, reaching out to friends. But because they didn't have anybody in the house screaming, "Oh my God, you won't believe this." The last thing, we have to look at this not with hindsight, but with foresight. Would you ever think to yourself, "Oh my gosh, I bet all of my roommates have been massacred," even when they saw Xana on the ground, unresponsive? She won't wake up. It never dawned on them that she was stabbed to death or that Maddie or Kaylee were stabbed to death. It just didn't. That's very obvious. So to me, they're carrying on as they normally would have because they still have no confirmation that anything bad has happened. Again, just more DMing, or I'm sorry, incoming and outgoing Snapchats. Finally, Dylan starts reaching out for Kaylee and Maddie at about 10:23. "Hey, you guys are you up?" I mean, I smile and laugh at that, or not laugh, but I smile at that because I think this is what they did. I think that they got up and they're like, "Hey, you guys up?" I'm telling you, I don't know about you guys, but I live in a house with multiple stories. And when I need to see if my son is up, I don't walk all the way over there if I'm on the other side of the house, and I don't yell. I'm like, "Hey, dude, are you up? Hey, you want to go to breakfast?" I, I mean, I guess it's just what's happened to us with cellular phones, but I think that's so normal. You can be in the same house and reaching out and it be very normal. That's what I think. And if this tells us anything, and it brings a smile to my face because I guess it makes me think for 1 minute before it all went to hell that things were normal for Dylan. "Hey, you guys up?" And that she thought it was going to be a normal day, and it wasn't. Again, just more snaps. And finally, as we all know, at 11:56, so about 3.5 to 4 hours, snapping and taking pictures and DMing and reaching out to friends and Instagramming, and they realize there's a problem. And even then, though, they think it's Xana passed out. All right, that is really my view on those. I can't wait to see what you all have to say. Let me take a quick look. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Barbarossa. It's normal for them. They're checking their social media. They have basically think that whatever happened the night before is sort of done and over with. They don't have any information that anything bad has happened. Their roommates, they didn't hear him scream. Again, they didn't hear him scream because it happened all too quickly. Although we do know she heard voices. But The time that it takes with a KBAR knife, a 6-foot guy in great shape to massacre these kids is nothing. Think about watching a boxing match and being in the ring, a 3-minute time in the ring, how slow that is, especially for the boxers. For those of you who have watched wrestling, I have 2 kids that wrestled. 2 minutes is an eternity. 1 minute is an eternity when you're hand to hand with others. Being in fights myself personally, fighting the bad guys hand to hand, seconds seem like minutes, seem like hours. It's a lot of time. He had so much time in that house to commit these crimes. As I pointed out, he could run 6-minute miles. In 6 minutes, you could be a mile away from where you are. And he had about 8 minutes in that house. He had an eternity to murder, to clean to some degree, to change, and to get out of there. And that's what he did. And but for his huge mistake of leaving that knife sheath, we might still be wondering who killed those beautiful kids. All right, let me make sure there's nothing else. Yeah, I agree. You know, the internal, if she was stabbed in her chest and then it closes up, it's all the internal damage that happens in the lungs and the heart, intestinally. You bleed to death, but it's inside of you. It's locked inside, so it's not spilling all over unless, as I say, you have your throat cut or multiple gashes and slashes in the heart area where the major vessels are. All right, you know, it's I love to be upbeat on the show, and I'm always so excited to really be with you all. This one's a hard one for me. I think it's hard because, you know, the trophy picture just is so gross, and you know, we're human. I'm human, and it makes me so angry. Um, and reliving and thinking about everything they went through is really something. But for people to make anything more out of the fact that Dylan and Bethany were doing anything other than being 20-year-olds, not understanding the massacre that had just took place. And for those of you wondering, no, this isn't going to reek and smell. This would had been within hours of the murders. You know, I see people on social media going, "Oh my God, the stench would have been," not at that time. No. In any event, to all of you, I wish you a great Saturday, a great rest of your weekend. I'm probably going to do another live tomorrow. There's one more point I want to bring out in this case. I also want to talk about Karen Reed and, you know, the big ID show that was done, the docuseries. And anyway, I just hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. And until next time, may justice be served. Thank you all for being here. So appreciate y'all.